So let's go to our fifth and final form, the swept blend. The swept blend is sort of a combination between the sweep and the blend, thus its name. We get two shapes, two sketches, one for the start and one for the end, and then they move along a sketched path. So it's more like a sweep because you get to sketch the path. I'm going to start here in a generic model family like the others, go to my Home tab, and click the Swept Blend tool. Like the sweep, we're introduced with a couple ways to create the sketch. We can either sketch the path or pick the path. And in this case, I'm going to do sketch path. One little challenge that we have with the swept blend is that the path has to be a single segment. So that's a little bit of a limitation, right? If I draw with a straight line, then that's it. It's just a straight path. It's basically a blend, which would make you kind of wonder what the usefulness of this would be. Well, let's undo that and look at one of the other shapes here. For example, a curve. Now, if I do that, we start to see that, okay, now we're getting a form that we wouldn't really be able to do with a normal blend because a normal blend would just go along a straight line. So you do get some flexibility, and we'll do a few other examples in a moment. If we look over here in the 3D view, what we see is two of these green planes, where previously with the sweep we only saw one. So we're actually going to have two shapes that we're going to sketch, and like the normal blend, it will transform from the one shape to the other along the path, which is curved in this case. If you look here on the sketch panel, we see that there are two profile buttons. We've got profile 1, profile 2, and they can both be by sketch or they can be by loaded profile. And as I mentioned in the sweep movie, we will be doing profile examples in a later chapter. So we're going to stick with sketches for now. So I'm going to choose Edit Profile for the first sketch. I'm going to keep these sketches fairly simple, which means I should be able to work relatively successfully here in the 3D view. But what you start to see if you look at each of the views is if my sketch was more complicated and required a little bit more precision, it would become rather difficult to work on it in any of the views that I have available to me. Down here, I'm skewed to the angle of the plane. Here, I'm skewed to the angle of the plane. The plan obviously is not a choice at all. 3D is okay, but it's not fantastic. Well, let me finish this and switch to the second profile. Okay, so I'm just going to click this button and do Edit Profile just to show you one alternative that we have here. If I click the Modify tool, if I click this Viewer button, it's called the Work Plane Viewer, you'll get this secondary window here. I'm going to move it out of the way. I'm going to make it a little larger so I can actually see what I'm doing. And now you can see that I'm looking right at that plane. If the angle of the plane is not conducive to giving you a proper sketch, then you can use this Work Plane Viewer feature and it should make it a little easier. Let's do something a little different this time. I'll draw an oval. So we're going to transform from a circle to an oval along that curved path. So we've just got curves in every direction here. Now you can close the viewer whenever you're done with it. You can see the path here. I can click Finish. So now I have my first sketch, my second sketch, and my path. And one more time, Finish again. And there is my swept blend. Maybe it's a piece of ductwork or something. I'm not really even sure what that is. It's a horn, but there's that curved form. So that's the basic concept behind the swept blend. All right, so getting back to the issue of the path, it's somewhat limiting this notion that we can only have a single segment path. But if you're somewhat creative, and I go to my swept blend, sketch my path, then you'll notice that you do have some other choices here, like my spline. And it might take a little bit of effort here to build this, but if you're a little creative with your choice of path, it actually is possible to create a much more complex path and get around the limitation, the multi-segment limitation, because technically this is a single object here, this spline object. So I'm going to click Finish, and this is now my path. Come over here. And again, I could use the Work Plane Viewer if I wanted to, but in this case, I'm just going to use some really simple forms. Click Finish and Finish again. And it is definitely possible to get some fairly complex forms even working within the limitation that the swept blend imposes on us with the single segment path. You just have to be a little bit more creative about it. So that's our 5 overall shapes. Any of those can be solid forms or void forms. And so in the final movie in this chapter, we're going to look at all of the forms together, both solids and voids, and compose them all into a single unified design.